I am Malin Bornschein, CEO of Reccan, and it's my pleasure to be here to tell you about our progress when it comes to pancreatic cancer diagnostics. Our mission is to save lives by improving the prognosis through earlier diagnosis. And why is that mission so important? About 500,000 new cases of pancreatic cancer occur globally. Almost as many die every year. At the time of diagnosis, the prognosis is really poor, and less than 10% survive 5 years. Early symptoms are inconclusive, and for 85% of the patients, the diagnosis comes too late, when it's no longer possible to resect and cure. It's not the most common cancer form, 10th or 12th, depending on the country, but it is in Finland already the second most common cancer-related cause of death, and it's predicted to become so also in the US before 2030. So these are really horrible numbers, but they are only numbers. For us at Reccan, this is personal. We have all friends and family who belong to those numbers. So we are committed to make this change. And specialists, oncologists and surgeons all over the world agrees with us that there is an urgent need for a better diagnostic method. So we have imaging techniques. They can detect pancreatic cancer fairly early, not very early. But they are not suitable for testing at scale because they are very labor-intensive. And then we have blood markers that are very suitable for testing at scale. But CA19-9 came in the 80s. It's not allowed to be used for diagnosis in most countries because it fails to detect about 15% of the true cases. Newly developed cell-free DNA tests, they are even worse. They are detecting about 60% of the true cancer cases. So we need new diagnostics. There are several different patient groups that are relevant here. Here are some of them. We have patients with increased risk, hereditary increased risk of developing pancreatic cancer. They quite often get the cancer a lot earlier than the normal cancer patients. And they are supposed to be followed up, ideally several times a year. But lack of efficient means of following up means that we see a surgeon, not me, might see them once a year. And that's not often enough because we know that pancreatic cancer can go from stage 1 to stage 4 within 4 to 6 months. It needs to be done a lot more frequently. Then we have a huge patient group, new onset diabetes patients. They are not followed up at all due to the fact that efficient means of screening is lacking. Based only on these 3 patient groups, we have a total serviceable market in Europe and US alone of 4.3 billion euros. We've identified, through years of hard work within Lund University, 5 blood markers that are really good at determining if a patient has pancreatic cancer. A perfect diagnostic test would have an AUC, area under curve, of 1. That would mean that they will never miss a patient, and they would never diagnose a patient false positively. Thanks to COVID, it is now common knowledge that those tests do not exist. There are no such thing as a perfect diagnostic test. But ours come really close. We have in repeated studies showed that when we compare pancreatic cancer patients with healthy individuals, we have an area under curve of 98.4 to 99.6. That's really, really high. We've taken those markers and developed Reccan immunoassay. It's an assay based on these 5 patented biomarkers specific to pancreatic cancer. We've also developed a software. The test and the software are both optimized for analyses that are already installed at clinical laboratories all over the Western world. This means that implementing our tests can be done without any capital investment and without changing the put in place clinical routines. It's a very low threshold for implementation. We have finalized the development. We've performed rigorous analytical performance testing, and we've done a clinical trial of 500 patient samples. That is now being analyzed, and that data is going to be used to go into a larger cohort. We're super excited about this. Next time you hear me talk, I will present those results. Already looking forward to it. We will have our CE mark technical files done this year, CE mark next year. While waiting for that CE mark, we're going to use this clinical data to talk to patient organizations, to talk to surgeons, to talk to oncologists, to make sure that we are ready for the launch and that we can get even more clinical data with our collaboration partners. Through our founders, we are very well connected with specialist surgeons and oncologists all over the world. But our network grows denser the closer to Lund that we get. So initially, with our launch plans, we're going to focus on the Nordics. That's close to home. We know everyone. There are only 20 centers that we will address. Then we have a very specific markets, both public and private in Europe, that we're going to target next. And for a potential launch in regulatory and reimbursement-wise more strict markets like US or UK, we are going to need further investments. We've already secured a runway that is going to take us through Q1 2025 and the completion of our technical files. Then we're going to raise additional 2 million euros so that we can continue with our planned European launch. For a launch in the US and UK, we are going to need additional funding and also a strategic partnership to be doing that efficiently. To recap, we have a test that can find pancreatic cancer earlier and more accurately than what's possible today. There's a very low threshold to implement, since we can keep the clinical pathways that are used today, and we don't need any capital investments. We have health economic data showing that for risk groups, this is an economically efficient method of surveillance. In addition, we have next generation projects. So on an academic level, we are looking to our markers and friends, what they can do when it comes to efficiency in establishing treatment, efficiency, and surveillance after treatment. We also have a point-of-care test that is built to be placed at the diabetic center that is under development. But this is sort of our dreaming slide. We have more dreams. We're showing just a couple of them for you now. Between us, we have 50 years experience of surgery and research when it comes to pancreatic cancer. Really close collaboration with the university, as you can see from our next generation projects. And we have about 150 years experience on development and marketing of life science products. This is a brilliant bunch. We are all very committed, and we have a strong sense of urgency because we know that the very day that our test becomes available, it can also start saving lives. I hope that I have been able to transfer some of that sense of urgency to you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm happy you've been listening, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Great presentation. So you talk about the importance of early detection, right? But a lot of people will ask, well, what does early mean exactly? You alluded to it, but could you be a bit more specific?
Yes. So early we would define stage 1 or 2, and that more or less means that we can still resect. If you find a cancer in stage 3 or 4, if the cancer has been spread locally or, for instance, to the liver, all you can do is make the patient more comfortable. You have no chance of saving that patient.
Well, this question is related to that. Given the aggressiveness of pancreatic cancer, is it really feasible to save lives, or are you really aiming to prolong life?
When it comes to cancer, we normally count lives in 5 years. None of us will be happy with that, but that's how we count it. So it is to have. We know that by finding these cancers earlier, we can increase the number of 10% that survive 5 years to around 50%. So data showing between 40 and 50% would survive if found early enough, and then you normally don't follow patients more than 5 years. So that's sort of what we have to measure with.
And again, related to this, given often the diffuse symptoms, who will know to test early on? What is the trigger to use your test?
Yes. So one of the most important groups would be the hereditary ones. That's patients who have 2 close relatives or a mutation that makes it known that they are in a high risk. And statistically, they get the diagnosis 10 years earlier. So here we're not looking at 60 years old, we're looking at 50 years old, maybe 40 years old. It's a really important patient group to take care of. So that's one. And then new onset diabetes. Quite often, if you're above 50 years of age and you get a new onset diabetes, a certain percentage, it's between 1 and 3% in different studies, has a pancreatic cancer as well, and needs to be followed up for a certain period of time. So those are the easiest one. Then, of course, also early symptoms, but that's way trickier.
Yeah. Shifting a little bit to in terms of geographical markets, what are you aiming for? You mentioned a couple, but could you be a bit more specific?
I don't want to. No, we have. I can say we have 4 different countries in Europe that we're aiming for, and where we have their way of introducing diagnostics to the market, and or how they are working with public versus private. Diagnostics make them really interesting for us. And then we're, of course, also building a lot on where we have the strongest relationships. That's also an important part for where we will choose to start.
So from your perspective, what needs to be done now in order to make your technology a standard in the clinic?
We just need to keep on going the way we are doing. We're on track and have a solid plan.
Let me see here. We have time for maybe one more question. You talked about your dreams. So, this is a bit related maybe to the last question, but how do you envision making those dreams come true?
So if we're really dreaming, super dreaming now, then our panel would not only be able to find these patients early enough, but we also have a case of about a third. But we have the same harsh treatment for any cancer patient, and it's really harsh. Some patients die from the treatment, and if our markers would also be able to be a guidance to the kind of treatment that you should get. But now we're dreaming. That's dreaming. That would be absolutely amazing. We would save both suffering and money. That would be amazing.
Great. Well, let's hope those dreams come true. Thank you so much. It was great to listen to your talk.
Thank you. Thank you.